So I got the idea for this one from the traditional games board of 4chan, the Food Fight Scearnio from Shadowrun. It was something of a tradition up until the 5th edition, where it was Food Fight Scearnio in name only, and the premise is simple. You have the players go out to a convenience store, the convenience store is attacked by thugs, let the players deal with it however. And using that approach, you can discover a lot of insights about how your players work.
First, ask each player why they're going to the convenience store. This is actually probably the one situation where there can be a wrong answer, with that answer being, "My character wouldn't go to a convenience store." Other than that, nothing is really off the table. They might work there part-time, or they might be meeting somebody there, or maybe they just really want some late-night munchies. What they were doing before they get the urge to do this, to go to the convenience store, can also be important. Did they finish working some other job? Are they just waking up? Some other questions you might ask are, how are they getting there? What are they taking with them? If they go wearing full-body riot gear and carrying guns, that'll likely attract somebody's attention, but might make sense if they're coming back from a run. If they were lounging around their hideout all day and they all pile into the car to get there, it might suggest that their hideout is in a rural area. Basically, just use this setting to pull out all kinds of details from the player, and it's also a very good way to test your improvisation skills as well. Just keep in mind that it's a convenience store. The only things they sell are small items, usually prepackaged food or automotive or travel items. They're also probably all sold at a higher price than what you might normally see, but the store is going to be in some place that's easy to get to or open at a time most other stores are closed. It could probably also be the only store available in the area if they're in someplace rural. After you've got all the details you want, have them arrive at the store for whatever reason they're there for. And while the player characters are doing their thing, a gang of thugs come in wanting to harass everybody and trash the place. At this point, let the players handle the situation however they want. If they want to sneak out while the thugs are smashing the place up, have them roll for stealth. If they want to fight their way out, announce the roll for initiative. Talking their way out could also be an option, but only if weapons haven't been drawn and people haven't been attacked yet. Then, after the players have dealt with the ruffians in their chosen manner, you can tie up any loose ends and either end the scenario there, or call for an intermission while you come up with something else. After all, this scenario could make for a useful way to plan out what happens for future sessions. The thugs that attack could be a part of a larger gang that needs routing. A shootout at a convenience store could easily attract police attention. If a player character was going to meet somebody there, something might have happened to that person. Would the character that works there still have a job after this incident? Those are just a few things you can consider when building off on this scenario. So now we know the basic idea of this scenario, how do we use it, and what can go wrong? The idea behind using this scenario is to find out how your players think. With that in mind, you have to remain mindful of how the players react to things. If they seem bored or uninterested in the questions starting out, little story details might not be that important to them. Their character's motivation for going to the store might hold some clue for what a player wants out of a game. If they fight the thugs at the drop of a hat, they're probably interested in a very fight-heavy scenario. Though should they try to talk their way out, they might be more interested in, well, talking their way out of things. Pay attention to how they respond and react accordingly later in the game. This particular scenario relies on the modern advent of a store that's open 24 hours, or at least late into the night. If you're okay with a dose of anachronism though, this might also work in a fantasy setting by making the destination a general store in the outskirts of a medieval village. What makes this historically inaccurate is that general stores began cropping up in the late 18th century, with some of the oldest such stores I've heard of opening 12 years after the United States declared their independence from the British Empire. On the other hand though, one of the most well-known fantasy games, Dungeons & Dragons, is fraught with all manner of inaccuracies, like the concept of leather armor with metal rivets in it being somehow sturdier than a whole unpunctured piece of leather, or kobolds being subterranean lizard people instead of mischievous house spirits. I digress though. General stores, according to my research, were sort of a community center in the 18th and 19th century America and England. Along with traveling salespeople, general stores were also how most of rural America got their goods. However you decide to run it, this sort of scenario in a fantasy setting would probably make more sense to happen during daylight hours. Here's some final thoughts I have regarding the food fight scenario. This was, and still is, an official module from Shadowrun. My first encounter with this was actually as a fan-made scenario in Shadowrun Returns. It's pretty short in Shadowrun Returns. I finished it in minutes using my character from Dead Man's Switch, the original scenario for Returns. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, there is a Food Fight 5.0 in the quickstart rules for Shadowrun 5th edition. However, it goes from being about a random gunfight in a convenience store to a raid on a mafia-owned burger joint at the behest of a hippie behind on paying his protection money. I ran the Food Fight 5.0 once, and the players completely derailed it, deciding instead they wanted to join the mafia. And so, when they made a compelling argument to the mafia, after promptly killing an NPC in one shot that I sent in to stir up the trouble I was expecting them to cause, I let them join. They were officially goons the mafia would call on every so often if they had something the mafia didn't want to get their own hands dirty over. So if there's a lesson to be learned here, it's this. The first session is a good time to figure out what the players want.